What would you do if your country's biggest trading partner, your closest ally, looked you in the eye and said, "Don't make that deal, or I'll blow up our entire trade relationship"? That's not a hypothetical. It happened last week, and Canada just did it anyway. Prime Minister Mark Carney flew to Beijing and signed the first high-level economic pact with China in history. The reaction from Washington was instant and volcanic, a direct public threat from the former president to slap a 100% tariff on all Canadian exports if Ottawa makes a deal with Beijing. So why would Canada take that risk? What's in this deal that's worth gambling, a relationship worth over $1 trillion a year? The answer is a brutal calculation about the future. It all comes down to two things: saving a traditional industry that's been strangled for years and making a controversial bet on the technology of tomorrow. This is about Canada trying to build an economic backdoor out of its own neighborhood before the door locks permanently. And it might just be the most important and dangerous trade move we've seen in years. This is the domino. Let's follow where it falls. Let's start with the seed. Canola. In Canada, it's not just a crop, it's a national industry. You're talking about thousands of farmers, entire towns, and an export powerhouse. And for years, China was its golden ticket, a massive $4 billion a year market. Then, the door slammed shut. During a major diplomatic freeze, China hit it with combined tariffs as high as 84%. Let's be clear, that's not a tax. That's a keep-out sign designed to cripple. Overnight, farmers were stranded. Their single biggest customer was gone, and political solutions kept failing. This deadlock became the symbol of a broken relationship. This new deal, it rips that sign down. Starting March 1, 2026, that tariff plummets to about 15%. It's a phased drop, but the direction is everything. Just like that, the door is back open. We're talking about immediate survival and long-term stability for entire farming communities in the prairies. It's the massive, tangible win Carney needed to show this new China strategy isn't just talk. But here's the undeniable truth about high-stakes deals. You always give something to get something. And what Canada gave up is where this story gets explosive and controversial. Because the price for saving the agricultural heartland was opening a new, carefully controlled door on the coast for nearly 50,000 Chinese electric cars. That's the trade. So, what did Canada give to get its farmers back in the game? A huge, controversial bet on the future of cars. Here's the deal. Canada will allow up to 49,000 Chinese-made electric vehicles into the country each year at a low tariff of just 6.1%. That's a staggering drop from the 100% tariff that was just imposed months ago. Now, why would Canada do this? Why open the door to the very competition that the US and Europe are slamming shut? The official line from Ottawa is about incentivizing investment. The idea is this quota isn't a gift, it's bait. The message to Chinese automakers is clear. If you want guaranteed tariff-free access to the North American market for tens of thousands of cars, you need to start building them here, in Canada. It's a $30 billion gamble. That's the estimated value of the EV supply chain investment Canada is chasing. The government is betting that the promise of easy access will force Chinese giants like BYD to set up factories on Canadian soil, bringing jobs and technology. But the critics see a Trojan horse. They argue you're letting the fox into the henhouse, giving Chinese companies a direct foothold to undercut domestic automakers before they've even built a single plant here. Is this a strategic masterstroke or a dangerous concession? The answer depends entirely on what happens next. Okay, let's talk about the risk. Because to get why this Canada-China deal is such a big gamble, you have to understand the promise that was already made before it was signed. Here's what happened. In the weeks leading up to this, President Donald Trump had a public message. He said it clearly. If Canada makes a new trade deal with China, the US would hit back with a 100% tariff. On everything. Not just on cars. On everything Canada sells south of the border. Lumber, oil, beef, all of it. So when Prime Minister Carney signed this deal in January, he wasn't stepping into the unknown. He was stepping over a line that had already been drawn in the sand. The threat wasn't a surprise reaction. It was the known cost of doing business. And the insult was part of the threat. Trump didn't call him Prime Minister. He called him Governor Carney, reviving that old dig that Canada isn't really its own boss. The accusation was that Canada was just becoming a backdoor for Chinese products into America. Now, here is the impossible math Canada is trying to solve. Over 70% of everything Canada sells to other countries goes to the United States. That relationship is the entire foundation of the economy. So Carney's bet is this: can we open a new door with China without the United States slamming and locking the giant essential door we've always used? He's gambling Canada's economic stability on the idea that the threat is just tough talk. But when the threat is a 100% tariff on everything, you can't afford to be wrong. So why take this risk? Why stare down a 100% tariff threat? For Canada, this isn't just a trade deal. It's the opening move in a much bigger, much more urgent game: survival. For decades, one number has defined and haunted Canadian economic policy: 70%. That's the percentage of all exports that go to just one customer, the United States. Imagine running a business where one client can call and, with one decision, wipe out 70% of your revenue. That's not a strategy. That's an existential risk. Prime Minister Carney's target is to break those chains. The official goal is to double Canada's non-US exports by 2030. This China deal is the first giant leap toward that. It's about building an economy with multiple doors, so no single partner can hold the only key. This is the real story. The canola, the EVs, they're the tools. The mission is independence. After years of watching US politics swing from friendly to hostile, Canada is finally trying to build its own economic sovereignty. They're betting that in a world of feuding superpowers, the only safe place for a middle power is to have options. And right now, China is the biggest option on the board. The gamble is that the reward, a future where Canada isn't held hostage by a single market, is worth the immediate terrifying risk of angering that market today. Now, let's bring this home. This feels like high-level geopolitics, but the ripples from this deal will hit Main Street. They will hit your wallet, your job, and what's in your driveway. First, stability at the pump and in the grocery store. A stronger farming sector in the prairies means more secure local economies. That can mean better prices and more consistent supply for things that come from the land. Second, the electric car in your garage. That quota of 49,000 Chinese EVs. It's meant to create a price war. The goal is to dramatically lower the cost of going electric for Canadian families, fast. But it also pressures every other automaker to lower prices or innovate quicker. You win on choice and cost, but local auto workers might feel the squeeze as the market transforms overnight. Finally, your economic security. If this gamble pays off and Canada successfully builds more trade doors, it means a more resilient national economy. That can translate to more diverse job opportunities and a buffer if the US economy sputters. But if it backfires and triggers those US tariffs, the cost of almost everything imported from or through the US could skyrocket. This deal is a fork in the road. One path leads to a more independent, self-determined Canada with cheaper tech and stronger farms. The other risks a brutal trade war that makes daily life more expensive. The path we're on depends entirely on the next moves in Washington and Beijing. Now, let's talk about the part of this deal you won't see on an invoice. It's not about tariffs or quotas. It's about people. Buried in the fine print is a simple but powerful promise: visa-free travel for Canadians to China. Think about that. For years, the relationship between these two countries has been frozen. Diplomats weren't talking. Businesses were hesitant. This single move, dropping the visa requirement, is designed to thaw that freeze overnight. Why does this matter so much? Because trade deals signed in boardrooms only work if people on the ground believe in them. This is about rebuilding the human connections that make business possible. It's about Canadian entrepreneurs being able to hop on a plane to Shanghai for a meeting without a 2-week paperwork headache. It's about tourists spending money in each other's cities and students exchanging ideas in universities. China is betting that by making it easy for Canadians to visit, they'll rebuild the goodwill that's been lost. They're opening the door for more than just goods. They're opening the door for influence, for cultural exchange, and for a deeper kind of partnership that goes beyond canola and cars. For Canada, it's a low-cost, high-reward win. It costs the Treasury nothing but gives Canadian citizens and businesses a huge new advantage. In the high-stakes game of geopolitics, this is the soft power move that could make the hard numbers in the trade deal actually work. This brings us to the clock ticking in the background of this whole story, the year 2030. That's not a random date. It's Canada's self-imposed make-or-break deadline. The federal government has a public official target to double the value of Canada's non-US exports by 2030. Let's be clear. That's an enormous radical shift for an economy built over a century to feed the American market. This China deal is the single biggest step toward hitting that target. But 2030 is also a political deadline. It's likely the outer limit of Prime Minister Carney's first term. He has roughly 4 years to prove this high-risk bet is paying off. He needs to show that the Chinese EV companies are building factories here, that the canola money is flowing back to the prairies, and that new trade doors are opening. If it works by 2030, he wins a historic legacy as the leader who gave Canada real economic independence. If it fails, if the US makes good on its tariffs, or if China doesn't deliver the investment, then the entire strategy collapses, taking his government's credibility with it. So every move, from this deal to the next, is a sprint toward 2030. It's a race to prove that a middle-power nation can rewrite the rules of its own economic destiny before the old rules shut it down for good. Now, here's the thing that should make Washington really nervous. Canada isn't acting alone. Look south. Mexico is playing the exact same game. For years, Mexico has been quietly but steadily deepening its trade ties with China. They're taking Chinese investment, increasing manufacturing partnerships, and building their own backdoor into the US market. And they're doing it while staying inside the North American trade bloc. Canada is now openly following that playbook. The goal is the same. Don't pick a side between the US and China. Use both. Take Chinese investment and technology to build stronger industries at home, then sell those finished goods into the lucrative US market under the existing free trade agreement. This creates a massive problem for the United States. Their strategy has been to build a united North American front against Chinese economic influence. But if both Canada and Mexico are quietly weaving China into their industrial bases, that front doesn't exist. The US isn't just dealing with goods coming directly from China. It's dealing with goods that are made in North America, but built with Chinese parts, Chinese technology, and Chinese investment. For Canada, Mexico's moves provide crucial political cover. It's harder for the US to single out and punish Canada when its other major partner is on a similar path. This isn't a Canadian rebellion. It's a continental shift. And it means the old rules of America First trade are already crumbling. So, after all the geopolitics and the threats and the grand strategies, let's ask the raw bottom-line question. Who actually wins from this deal? In the immediate term, Canada's farmers and China's automakers are the clear victors. Billions in locked-up canola revenue gets freed. Chinese EVs get a precious low-tariff beachhead into North America. In the medium term, the winner is uncertainty. For Canadian workers and consumers, the future just got a lot less predictable. EV prices might fall, but auto jobs might change or move. Groceries might stabilize, but a trade war could make everything from cars to ketchup more expensive. In the long term, the winner will be decided by one thing: investment. If Chinese companies build those EV battery plants and assembly lines in Ontario or Quebec, creating thousands of jobs, then Carney's gamble looks like a masterstroke. Canada wins new industry and real independence. But if the Chinese EVs just get shipped in, take market share, and no factories get built, if Canada just becomes a sales lot rather than a workshop, then the deal fails. China wins a market, Canada loses leverage, and the US threat becomes a reality. This deal isn't the finish line. The real negotiation, the one for the factories, the jobs, and the true economic power, starts now. And the result will define not just trade, but what kind of country Canada is for a generation.